Have you ever walked away from a conversation just, I don't know, utterly baffled, wondering why it felt so well off?
Oh, absolutely.
Or maybe you felt like you were speaking a totally different language than the person right in front of you, even though, you were both speaking English. It's
Yeah.
like there's this hidden script we're all supposed to be following, but nobody ever actually hands you a copy.
That's a feeling I think pretty much everyone can relate to. You've really hit on something incredibly fundamental there.
Hmm.
Our daily interactions, from just casual chats to really intense negotiations, they're
Yeah.
all governed by this complex, often completely invisible set of rules.
Right.
So today we're doing a deep dive into Professor Anne Curzan's brilliant work, How Conversation Works: 6 Lessons for Better Communication from the Great Courses.
Okay.
And this deep dive is all about, well, pulling back the curtain on those invisible rules. We're going to explore what makes conversations click or, unfortunately, sometimes just spectacularly unravel.
Yeah, that happens.
Our mission really is to equip you with what Professor Curzan calls conversational awareness. It's like a new lens to understand and strategically improve your communication skills, whether you're chatting in person or typing away online.
Okay, conversational awareness. I like that.
And the solutions, as you'll find, are often surprisingly counterintuitive. It's not always what you'd expect.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The idea that conversation is work.
Yeah.
That that sounds a bit daunting, honestly. What exactly does Professor Curzan mean by that? Are we all just like punching conversational clocks every time we talk?
Ha! Well, it's not quite about punching a clock in the literal sense, no. But it absolutely requires effort. And for it to feel effortless, everyone involved really needs to contribute.
Right. Shared effort.
Exactly. Think about the sheer volume for a second. There was a study published in Science back in 2007 that found people utter roughly 16,000 words a day.
16,000.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's a huge amount of conversational practice, right? And yet we still find ourselves stuck in these awkward, really one-sided exchanges sometimes.
Definitely.
Professor Curzan gives this really vivid example of Jim and Jane at a dinner party. Jim's there. He's trying his best, trying to keep the conversation afloat. He's asking questions like, are the kids having a good summer? And are they both still swimming? He's offering up topics, even shares a personal anecdote.
Okay. It sounds like he's doing his part.
Totally. But Jane's responses are just minimal, like, yes, busy, or yes. Still quite seriously and critically, she asks no questions back. None of Jim's topics get picked up.
Oh, man. I have definitely been Jim in that situation. And I've definitely been on the receiving end of it, Jane, too. It's utterly exhausting.
It is.
You feel like you're doing all conversational grunt work, pulling all the weight,
Yeah.
and it just makes you want to, I don't know, turn away, give up.
Exactly. Jim's left there thinking, okay, do I try something completely new or do I just turn to someone else?
Yeah.
It's a really clear lack of that shared conversational burden,
Yeah.
which makes the whole interaction feel like, well, a ton of work for Jim and basically zero for Jane.
So what does this all mean for us? Like, how can we make sure we're not being a Jane in our own lives? Or, burning out like Jim? I want to contribute. I really do. But sometimes it's genuinely hard to know how.
That's a great question. And Professor Curzan offers 3 really actionable pieces of advice for sharing that conversational work. It emphasizes both talking and active listening.
Okay, good. What are they?
First, ask your fair share of questions. And this isn't about like rapid fire interrogation.
Right, not an interview.
No, exactly. It's about genuine follow-up questions that show you're actually engaged, you're listening. If it's someone you don't know well, she suggests basically assuming everyone is interesting and then actively try to figure out why.
Huh. That's a different way to think about it.
Yeah, and for someone you do know well, these questions are a really powerful way to learn what's truly going on with them, showing you care, and that you've actually listened to past conversations.
That's a really good point. It's not just about getting information out of them. It's about showing you're invested in the person, right?
Precisely.
Okay.
Okay, so the second piece of advice is to help others ask you questions.
Ah, okay. Flip it around.
Yeah, don't be a conversation stopper. Her own self-introduction is a perfect example here. Instead of just saying, I teach English linguistics, which can kind of stop a conversation cold.
Yeah. Where do you go from there?
Right. She offers something like, I teach English linguistics, focusing on how language shapes our daily interactions. And yes, I even vote on the word of the year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's much better.
See, that immediately gives the other person multiple really accessible hooks for follow-up questions. It invites them in.
This is really shifting my perspective. I never thought of my self-introduction as like setting the stage for the other person's engagement. It's like laying out a conversational buffet for them.
It absolutely is. A buffet, I like that.
Hmm.
And the third piece of advice follows naturally. Put interesting topics on the table and actively pick up others' topics. She suggests maybe having a couple of accessible topics kind of prepared, nothing too heavy, like maybe a news article you found interesting or a movie you've seen.
Right, some easy entry points.
Exactly. And just as critically, when someone else puts a topic out there, don't just let it die.
Oh yeah, don't drop the ball.
Engage with it, ask a follow-up question, see where it leads. It's supposed to be a cooperative dance, not a
A
monologue.
cooperative dance. Okay, I get that. So if the first lesson is about contributing your share, doing the work,
Mm-hmm.
the next layer Professor Curzan peels back is how we actually make those contributions, right? Especially when we're navigating things like requests and responses. Because sometimes it really does feel like we're always reading between the lines, doesn't it?
Oh, you are definitely not alone in feeling that. That whole reading between the lines, what linguists call conversational implicature, it's not just common, it's actually fundamental to how we communicate politely and effectively.
Implicature.
Yeah. And to understand why, Professor Curzan delves into the work of philosophers like J.L. Austin. He showed that language doesn't just describe the world, it actively performs actions. He called these speech acts.
Speech acts, like
Yeah.
saying I do at a wedding.
Yeah.
You're not just describing something, you're actually doing something legally binding.
Exactly. Perfect example. Now, another philosopher, John Searle, he further broke down how every time we speak, we're doing way more than just uttering words.
Hmm.
So when you say something like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm busy, to turn down an invitation,
Yeah.
you're performing a speech act. There's what's literally said, Searle called that the locutionary force. It's just the statement, you are busy.
Okay, the literal meaning.
Right. But then there's the implied meaning, the intention behind it, that's the illocutionary force. In this case, it's your polite refusal.
Gotcha, the real message.
Exactly. And then the perlocutionary force is the actual effect it has on the listener. They understand you won't be coming to dinner.
Locutionary, illocutionary, perlocutionary. Wow.
Yeah. And the really profound takeaway here is that most of our crucial social interactions, especially the subtle ones, the polite ones, they happen not in what's literally said, but in that implied meaning, that illocutionary force.
So mastering this between-the-lines communication is key.
It's absolutely key. It allows for politeness, for nuance, and ultimately for smoother, more effective interactions without having to spell absolutely everything out in blunt terms.
That makes so much sense. We all kind of instinctively understand that, even if we don't know the fancy terms.
Precisely. Or take another common indirect request. You're at the farmer's market, maybe it's cash only, and you exclaim, ah, shoot, I forgot to go to the ATM.
Yeah, been there.
The literal statement, the locutionary force, is just a fact about your memory and the ATM. But the implied meaning, the illocutionary force, given the context, is pretty clearly a request for a loan, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Or at least checking if someone could lend you money.
Exactly. Or think about asking, do you know what time it is? Literally, it's a question about the other person's knowledge. But we all interpret it as an indirect request for the actual time. Imagine if you just replied yes and walked away.
Huh. Yeah, that would be rude. Or
Right.
just weird. Chaos.
Total chaos. So indirectness is incredibly common and useful.
Okay, that's fascinating. So it's not just about what we say, but what we imply. Does this mean direct speech is always rude then? Or are there times we should be direct?
No, not at all. That's a great question. Direct speech can actually be incredibly strategic and powerful in the right context.
Like when?
Well, think about when you're in a position of authority. If you're chairing a meeting, saying, I'm calling this meeting to order, or, okay, it's 10 bio 0, I'm going to get us started now, that sends a really clear signal of your authority and keeps things efficient.
Right, no messing around.
Exactly. Or a parent might say, very directly, I'm telling you right now that you cannot have more than one friend in the car. It's authoritative, leaves very little room for misinterpretation.
Okay, so directness has its place for authority and clarity.
Absolutely. Indirect speech, on the other hand, is generally seen as more polite and collaborative. It respects the other person's autonomy, their sort of personal space.
Uh-huh.
So you'd typically use it when asking a superior, like, Professor, would you mind maybe going over that chart again? Or, as a polite customer, could I possibly get a pound of sliced turkey? It minimizes any potential hierarchy or imposition.
Okay, but isn't a lot of this just, well, common sense repackaged? Like, we instinctively know to be polite most of the time. Why do we need to consciously break it all down like this?
That's a really fair point. And yes, much of this is subconscious. We navigate these things pretty well without constantly thinking about locutionary and illocutionary forces.
Right.
But Professor Curzan argues, and I think she's right, that becoming consciously aware of these subtle mechanisms allows you to be much more strategic in your conversational choices.
Well, strategic.
Okay. It's about turning that instinct into an intentional skill. Knowing why indirectness feels polite helps you choose the right level of directness or indirectness for a specific situation to achieve a particular goal.
I get that it's about being strategic, turning instinct into skill.
Hmm.
But I don't know, sometimes when you're being so strategic with politeness, doesn't it risk feeling a bit inauthentic
Yeah.
or even manipulative? How do we make sure we're using this awareness for genuine connection and not just to, like, get our own way?
That's a really crucial distinction to make, absolutely. And Professor Curzan emphasizes that genuine conversational awareness isn't about manipulation at all. It's actually rooted in empathy and effectiveness.
Empathy.
Yeah, it's about understanding the other person's needs and perspective in the interaction. Think about it this way. If you're in an uncomfortable conversation, maybe someone starts gossiping about a colleague. Awkward. You could be direct and say, hey, I don't think we should talk about this, which, might feel abrupt or even judgmental to the other person.
Yeah, could shut things down hard.
Or you could use what she calls a strategic non sequitur. You pivot, maybe saying something like, oh, speaking of movies, have any of you seen that new sci-fi film yet?
Change the subject smoothly.
Exactly. It's indirect, sure, but it's very effective in changing the topic without direct confrontation. It preserves everyone's comfort, their face, as we'll get to, so it empowers you to navigate these tricky situations with more grace and control, which actually builds trust over time rather than eroding it. It's about navigating effectively, not manipulating.
Okay, that makes more sense. Using the awareness to navigate, not just persuade. It's incredible how much nuance there is in just everyday talk.
Yeah.
But what about the really challenging conversations, the ones we all kind of dread? Like having to give someone bad news or maybe ask a huge favor or, oh God, telling your boss they made a mistake. Does this invisible script still apply then, or do we just have to be brutally direct and hope for the best?
You are definitely not alone in dreading those, and Professor Curzan highlights these specific kinds of interactions. She calls them face-threatening acts, or FTAs for short.
Face-threatening acts. Okay, that sounds serious.
Well, they can be. Think of it this way. Every time we interact, we're all subconsciously trying to protect two key things about ourselves. First, our positive face.
The positive face.
Yeah, that's basically our desire to be seen as competent, to be liked, respected, approved of by others.
Okay, wanting people to think well of us.
Exactly. And second, our negative face, which sounds bad, but it just means our need for personal space, for autonomy, the freedom to make our own choices without being imposed upon.
Right, wanting to not be pushed around or inconvenienced.
Precisely. So an FTA is basically any conversation, any speech act that potentially threatens either the speaker's or the listener's positive or negative face. And politeness, far beyond just saying please and thank you, becomes absolutely crucial for navigating these FTAs successfully.
Okay, so how do we handle these FTAs without completely, fumbling the ball? What are the strategies for softening the blow, protecting everyone's face?
Great question. Let's take that tricky scenario. Telling a superior they might have made a mistake. That's a potential threat to their positive face, right? Their competence.
Definitely. Scary stuff.
So you can start by actually enhancing their positive face first. Maybe say something like, I know how meticulous you usually are with these reports, and you probably want to know if something wasn't quite right.
Okay, cushioning it.
Yeah, affirming their general competence. Then you use hedges and offer them an out. Like, I saw something here that may be a slight mistake, but honestly, I may be wrong myself. I just wanted to quickly point it out in case you wanted to look.
So you're making it tentative. Maybe, might be wrong.
Exactly. You're essentially apologizing for the imposition of pointing it out, protecting their negative face, not apologizing for finding the mistake itself. This gives them space to accept the feedback gracefully without feeling attacked.
That's clever. Okay, what about asking a big favor? Like, say, asking to use a friend's timeshare. That feels like a big imposition on their negative face.
Huge imposition. So again, you mitigate. You could start with a compliment, maybe enhancing their positive face related to generosity. Wow, you were so generous to offer the timeshare last year. I saw the pictures. It looks absolutely gorgeous.
Buttering them up a little.
Well, maybe a little. But then, crucially, you embed an out right away. Something like, No worries at all if it's not possible. I completely understand if you're planning on using it yourselves or if maybe someone else has already asked.
Building in the escape route for them right from the start.
Exactly. It gives them a really easy, graceful way to decline without feeling obligated or awkward. Then you make your indirect request. I was just wondering, if maybe it might be available for a weekend in October.
That's incredibly smart. It shows respect for their space and their decision.
It creates options and minimizes the threat to their negative face. Now, here's a surprising FTA that Professor Curzan points out many people overlook.
Giving advice.
Giving advice, really. But isn't that usually helpful? We often think it's a gift, right? But unsolicited advice can actually be a major imposition on someone's eponymy, their negative face. It implies you know better or that their plan isn't good enough.
Huh. Never thought of it that way.
So advice often needs to be mitigated too, maybe by enhancing their positive face first. You've clearly thought a lot about this. Or explicitly giving them space to reject it. This might not work for you, but one thing I found helpful was.
Okay, wow. And you mentioned compliments, too. How can a compliment be face-threatening? That seems totally counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? But compliments can sometimes threaten face too. They can create an imbalance, making the receiver feel indebted. Sometimes they can feel like a power play, depending on who's giving it to whom.
I can see that.
And especially in the workplace, compliments about appearance, for instance, can be easily misconstrued or even feel sexualizing, threatening someone's professional face. Professor Curzan even cites a study by Janet Holmes, which found, interestingly, that women tend to give and receive significantly more compliments than men, often focusing on appearance, which can sometimes create awkward dynamics.
That's a truly profound observation. I hadn't really considered that angle before.
Oh,
Wow. I never thought of advice or even compliments as potentially face-threatening. It makes so much sense now why some interactions, even well-intentioned ones, can just go sideways.
Exactly. It's all about recognizing those underlying dynamics, the potential threats to positive and negative face.
It's not about avoiding these interactions entirely, but approaching them with, I guess, greater awareness and skill to make sure they land effectively and respectfully.
You got it. That's the
Okay.
core idea.
So if conversation is this really intricate dance with all these steps and potential missteps, what about relationships? Romantic ones, professional ones, even friendships. Are there subtle cues we're giving off, maybe unconsciously, that impact how well we connect? Is there like a subconscious linguistic dance that predicts success?
That's a fantastic question. And the answer, according to some really interesting research, is a resounding yes.
Really?
Yeah, there was a fascinating study back in 2010 by James Pennebaker and his colleagues down at UT Austin. They looked at something called language matching or language style matching and how it relates to relationship success.
Language matching. What exactly is that?
It's about the subtle linguistic cues we use, specifically the tiny, almost invisible function words. These are words like pronouns, I, you, we, articles, a, the prepositions to, for, over, conjunctions, and, but, so. Pennebaker found that people who are compatible, who click, tend to unconsciously align their use of these function words when they talk.
Wait, hold on. You mean like if I use the word "the" a lot and you also happen to use "the" a lot, we're more likely to get along. That sounds incredibly surprising.
It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But that's basically the idea. It's not about the content words, the nouns and verbs, but the way we structure our sentences with these little grammatical words.
So we're doing this completely subconscious linguistic dance that actually predicts if we'll click with someone, even before we consciously decide if we like them.
The evidence suggests exactly that. In one part of the study, they analyzed transcripts from speed dating experiments.
Okay. Speed dating.
Yeah. And they found that the couples who had high language style matching scores, meaning their use of function words was similar, were significantly more likely to want to see each other again to initiate a relationship. And this prediction held true even when the participants themselves consciously felt no particular initial interest or connection.
Whoa, that's wild. So our subconscious language is a better matchmaker than our conscious brain sometimes.
It certainly seems to be a very strong hidden predictor of compatibility and connection.
Okay, so what does this mean then for electronic conversations? Texting, email, social media, where so much is already lost. You don't have body language, you don't have tone of voice. Does this matching still happen somehow? Or do we just lose that whole layer of connection?
That's precisely the challenge with digital communication, isn't it? And it's also where human ingenuity kind of shines. While we definitely lose many crucial nonverbal cues online,
Yeah, tone is so hard online.
it really is. But we've actually developed these incredibly sophisticated written conventions to try and compensate and maybe even facilitate a kind of digital language matching.
Like what?
Well, think about how we use things like haha or lol for laughter or lightness, or using all cap PS for emphasis, or specific punctuation like exclamation points or question marks to try and mimic intonation.
Uh-huh. Or emojis?
Emojis, definitely. Or little acronyms like JK, for just kidding, to clarify tone and avoid miscommunication, or even using asterisks to correct typos. These aren't just random quirks, they're our way of adding back some of those subtle signals we miss face to face. We're creating a new kind of style matching, specifically for text.
Huh. So we're adapting, finding ways to bridge that gap even in the digital realm. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. And other pronoun-related findings seem relevant too. Penbaker also found, for instance, that couples who naturally use the word we more often when talking about their relationship tend to report greater marital satisfaction and have lower divorce rates compared to couples who emphasize you or I more.
We versus me. Makes sense.
Yeah, it suggests a shared identity. And interestingly, another finding was that women who used I or me more often in like instant messenger conversations actually correlated with greater relationship stability.
Wait, using I more meant more stability. That seems backwards.
It does seem counterintuitive at first, yeah. But the researchers speculated it might signal a healthy sense of independence within the relationship, which contributes to long-term stability. It's complex.
Wow. So many layers.
Yeah.
But okay, even with all these adaptations, is face-to-face still better for some things?
Oh, definitely. Professor Curzan really emphasizes that for those truly sensitive FTAs, we talk about things like breaking up with someone or having a really serious argument or delivering very bad news face-to-face interaction, or at the very least, a phone call is still far superior.
What is that?
Because, as she puts it, face-to-face human conversation can do more human work. The ability to instantly adjust your tone based on the other person's reaction, to see their nonverbal cues, and to engage in immediate repair work if something is misunderstood, that's just crucial for navigating those high-stakes, emotionally charged situations effectively and compassionately. Text just can't replicate that richness.
Yeah, you lose too much. Okay,
Yeah.
makes sense.
So if there's one big thing to remember from this whole deep dive, maybe it's this. Conversations are fundamentally a shared dance, and they really do require work from everyone involved. Becoming conversationally aware, tuning into both the spoken and the unspoken signals, understanding the direct and the indirect, knowing how to handle face saving, and even recognizing that subtle language alignment, it just empowers you to be a more effective, definitely more empathetic, and ultimately probably a happier communicator.
I love that. A shared dance that requires work. But awareness makes you a better dancer. It's not just about talking. It's really about connecting on so many levels we rarely even notice. This whole new lens on conversation is.
Yeah, it's truly profound. Thanks so much for breaking all that down. It helps us all become hopefully more savvy speakers and listeners.
My pleasure. It's fascinating stuff.
It really is. Now, if you're eager to dive even deeper into Professor Anne Curzan's brilliant insights on how conversation works, we'll put links to the great courses in the description below for you. And hey, we would genuinely love to hear from you. What's one conversational aha moment you've had listening to this? Or maybe a subtle signal you've noticed out in the wild since we started talking? Let us know down in the comments.
Yeah, definitely do that. And here's something to think about as you go about your day. Listen closely to the conversations around you, whether it's just a casual chat, maybe a professional meeting, or even looking at a text exchange you had. Try to identify just one instance where a seemingly small word, maybe a pause, or just a subtle shift in phrasing completely changed the dynamic or the feeling of that interaction. How much of our daily understanding, our connections, and maybe even our happiness really hinges on these tiny, often invisible acts of linguistic work.